Welcome to another edition of Got Gameplay. Brian Calhoun, Christine Chubb here this week as I cruise around in my 2011 Mustang.
It's swanky.
It is. Just wait till you make a turn.
Oh, we're in Chicago. Okay. I was going to ask where we were.
Little Canadian art on the side. That's the one thing that really bugged me. There's a billion American flags, and I guess that makes sense considering there are far more people in the United States than here in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But the two Canadian stickers is what they call them in the game. Paint jobs would be another term for it, a more common term.
Yeah.
But they actually call them stickers in the game. They kind of sucked. They weren't that great. I mean, the Italian one was pretty good. The Brazil one was decent.
Yeah.
But the Canadian one, I just didn't really want to put any of the Canadian things on my car because they just didn't look that great.
That's disappointing. Were they just a giant maple leaf or something terribly offensive like a beaver and maple syrup?
It's a stylized Canadian flag, which in and of itself looks okay. You can see on the side of the car.
Oh, okay.
But it sits too low on the door, and it's not big enough, and doesn't take up any of the other car. I mean, like the other one, the other sticker, if you will, in the game's parlance, well, it has sort of a deer on the side standing in front of a big maple leaf, and there's a maple leaf on the top, and it's more of a package. It's more of a show.
Oh.
Whereas this is just kind of like, it's the better looking of the two, but it's just kind of the stamp we put on the side of your door.
So are you, what? Okay, now let's talk about what you're doing here. Are you racing this one fellow?
No, so this is the crew. Welcome to the crew. And I'm just going to go through an entire mission of the crew right now. And in this mission, in that first part that you saw, I had to chase down this guy, which was far easier than when I did it at E3. I feel like they've definitely taken the collision part of the game and they've made that a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hit into somebody, even if you're just touching them side by side, as long as you're making contact with the other guy, that NPC's health meter will always constantly click down.
Yeah.
So I just had to really roll into him, and that was that. And in the story, I had to catch him so I can get his test driver's pass, which I don't think is a real thing.
They're just making stuff up.
So the idea is that I had to get it so I can drive this car around this racetrack.
Is this a famous racetrack or a fake racetrack?
This is a fake racetrack that I've never heard of.
Okay.
But it looks like a major racetrack. It looks like someone put a lot of money into this racetrack, but it's not a real racetrack.
It looks fancy, yeah.
In fact, I'm trying to think of famous places in this game, and I think like the Trump Tower in Chicago is there, but they call it the Chicago Tower. Is there a Chicago Tower?
I don't know. I don't know anything about Chicago. I just know that there's the Trump Tower there, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's the famous tower in Chicago. And I rolled by, and I'm like, oh, wait, I think that's the Trump Tower. And then it ended up saying Chicago Tower on the front, which if they couldn't get Trump to, agree to put his name in this game, obviously they'd have to rename it.
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of licensing. I mean, that's happened before in other games as well, where not everything is the exact name that it is. But I mean, a lot of the districts and the boroughs are all the same. They're all the correct names.
So, if there was a way I could describe how this game handles being in the United States, it's like someone took a picture of the United States, like of a map, right? And then they took that picture and put it on an easel, and they made a painting of it. So it's kind of close, but some details were missed.
Mm-hmm.
And in sense of missing details, I think it's, in the case of this game, I think it's just more like, well, it'd be silly if they made the entire United States.
Yeah.
That's not going to be really a thing. No one's going to want to drive across. Like, you're not going to spend 24 hours getting from here to like halfway through the United States.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can do it in, say, 90 minutes, okay, that's more reasonable. That's a video game.
It's true. I've taken that 21-hour drive down to Florida, and it is long.
So we continue this mission, and it's a driving game. So the missions are all just, here's an excuse for us to put you in another situation where we'd be driving a car fast.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, we chased somebody. We drove around the track really fast, doing basically time trials. And now we're going to be chased, which I always found this to be sort of this weird chase, considering, dude, I'm driving,
Yeah, a really fast car.
And they are driving not so fast cars.
Not so fast cars.
But everybody can keep up with you. I find that to be a problem with the cops as well.
Really?
And it makes more sense because the police officers would have their mechanics tune their vehicles so that they would have some horsepower under the hood, because you have to catch the guy if you're going to put him in jail.
True.
But everybody who chases you seems to be able to have the exact same speed requirements as you, and also it's not like you can just knock them off. Need for Speed, what was the last one? Rivals, I think it was. Maybe not the best game, and I think it's Rivals. Maybe not the best game in terms of like having this open world community that they tried to go for, considering they only put like 6 people on the map. But if you were racing as a cop, you didn't really have this stonewall advantage over anybody else. You didn't have a speed boost over all the people playing as the racers.
Yeah, because you get the nitrous boost in this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that game, everybody would just drive on the same terms. In this game, these cops are just big jerks, and they don't pay attention to the rules, and they just do whatever they want, and the reasons why they get on your case never really makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot about this game that I really, really did not like as I beat that mission, and that was finally the end of the mission.
Nice.
But don't worry, we'll be showing a bit more of the crew, because that's only part of it. I mean, you go from one area to the next to do missions, but a lot of the crew is just driving through the world. So we'll be showing a little bit of that in a second as we just go through all these menus. I found the menu system to be pretty good.
Yeah.
The fast travel system, especially. You want to go someplace really quick, you just hit the fast travel thing, and you were there. Loading times, not a big thing in this game. In fact, they were very, very short for a game this size.
That's
as
true.
we fast forward to later in the game. I mean, if this was a Call of Duty demo at E3, it would say right now on the screen, in, for the sake of time,
Yeah.
we fast forward further down the mission, and this is really the same mission. At the end of that mission, you're told drive from Chicago to New York City. So I figured let's just spend some time on the open road
Why not? Yeah.
and look at what happens, because this is where a lot of the gameplay is. And in terms of a racing game, it's not terrible. I find the controls to be a little floaty, but at the same time, I also find that as you progress, you can buy perks from different people in the game, and they're basically just modifiers, buffs, if you will, in common video game parlance. And that gives you better handling. That increases the handling of your car and of the game in general, which is weird because that means at some point somebody programmed the game to control worse than it could, so that you could buy these perks for it to control better, which blows my mind. But
Yeah.
I'm not a game designer.
That was their decision.
Yeah.
The thing that kills me about this game, and we talk about this a bit on Got Game this week, is obviously you can see the blue line at the top of the screen. That's the navigator. And I just think it's so weird that it's not on the ground. Like, it keeps drawing my eyes up. And then I found when I was playing it, I would crash into cars because I'd be like, okay, where am I looking to? How far am I going? Because you've got your little map down in the corner, but then you've got the navigator up there. And I felt very disjointed about how to get where I was going to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's not much I can say to that except for, yes, you are correct,
Yeah.
because for some reason they made that choice. And I guess I kind of understand it. It's a unique way of doing it. And in theory, it's not a horrible way of doing it, but it does take your eyes off the road.
Yeah.
And anybody who has a valid license knows what's the first thing that you're taught?
Don't take your eyes off the road.
Never take your eyes off the road. And I would double that as somebody who's actually been, in an actual race with actual race cars. Your focus, like, you're still looking around like in a normal car, but your focus is always what's happening around you.
Yeah.
In terms of where are the other cars. It's not what's happening above me, let's say about a story and a half in the air.
Yeah.
As we cross, not the Queens Bridge. Oh, I forget what the name of all the bridges are in New York City, but
The Brooklyn Bridge?
it's just the Brooklyn. Well,
I don't
actually, you do end up in Brooklyn, so
oh, there you go. So maybe it is.
start spreading the news. What's the rest of the? I just know from that point, start spreading the news, and then New York, New York.
I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York. In old New York.
What was it? Tony Bennett? Was that?
It was Old Blue Eyes, wasn't it? It was Frank Sinatra.
Yes, it was Sinatra. That's right. Actually, I came in on a train into New York City listening to that song.
Nice.
Kind of weird. But yeah, here we are. This kind of looks like New York City to me. You know, it's not a one-to-one representation,
Yeah.
but it kind of looks like New York City. And we were just driving here through an area that kind of looks like the countryside of Pennsylvania and, you know, parts of the country you'd have to drive through to get from Toronto to New York City.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not like a one-to-one exact representation, but it's not bad.
And that little picture in the girl in the corner who just popped up, that's Zoe. She is your guide, your FBI guide through this.
Your handler, if you
Handler.
will.
There you go. That's a better terminology.
And we are about to enter one of the tuning shops. There's a tuning shop for all of the different classifications. So when you buy a car, it's factory. So you take it to the street racer guys, and the street racer guys will give you a street racer package, and you can at that point either do your own tuning or just drive over to the dirt guy. And you have to go through the order. You have to get the dirt guy, and then once you get the dirt guy's package, you can go over to I forget what it is. It's not raid. Here's in fact the list. So it's dirt, and then it's perf, and then it's raid, and then it's circuit. And those are the types of vehicles you can have. Well, it's hard to explain because it's one vehicle, but many different sort of variants.
Yeah, you can like mod it up.
Yeah, and then once you're actually in the world, this is something that Jay Acevedo told us last week, but until you actually play the game, you don't really understand this.
Yeah.
You can buy all these not classic, but these customization options for your vehicle. You can make it a street vehicle, or you can make it a dirt vehicle, or you can make it a raid vehicle, or you can make it a circuit vehicle. And then you get into the world, and you bring up the menu, and you can just flip between them. So it's like you have 4 or 5 of the same car, but it's always like just one car. It's kind of weird. But it makes sense in terms of the game itself, as I take my street Mustang and make it a dirt Mustang. And I'll go through some more of the options as we look at this game before we end our video look here of the crew. And yeah, I mean, I could have just left right now, and I have a basic dirt vehicle spec, whatever. But then, you know, I like to customize my Mustangs as much as I can.
Fair enough.
To fit my personality. And there's actually a few here that really did, like the one with this giant skirt here.
The thing I found about this part, as somebody who doesn't know anything about racing or cars, I found it was all kind of gobbledygook to me. Like, I didn't know what the difference was between having something that I didn't have. So, like, it didn't mean that much to me. So I would just take whatever they recommended. I was like, all right, fine, I'll do that.
Well, having a front splitter or skirt on your vehicle in terms of racing would actually mean a lot. But in this game is not really set in reality in terms of the vehicles. Instead of like tuning your engine and getting a better gearbox and stuff like that, in terms of reality, that would get you better acceleration and speed. But what you do is you just collect parts through either buying them here in these tuning shops for either the game's currency that you can actually earn in the game, or you can just like outright buy game currency for this game, which I did.
Yeah, there are microtransactions, right?
Yes. Well, yes, microtransactions in a sense. Basically, what happens is that everything in this game can be bought for in-game currency, or just give them money and they'll give you that other currency, and you can buy the game, you know, in-game stuff that way. And you can see, like, every time I buy a piece, it has 2 prices.
Yeah.
One is far more than the other because the higher one is the game currency. The other one is just the stuff that I paid actual money to get. And yeah, you can use either to get it. And in terms of, you know, these pieces I'm putting on the car right now, it didn't really matter what they were. They were all just, you know, cosmetic.
Yeah.
You'll play for the game. You can buy these as well, but I mean, it's easier really just to play for the game. And you'll come across the missions I told you about, where you're just driving on the highway and all of a sudden, speed challenge or slalom challenge or whatever, get escape challenge, stuff like that. And you'll do that challenge and it'll rank you. And if you do well enough, you'll get a gold, a silver, or a bronze part. And obviously, whatever part you get, the gold, the silver, or the bronze one, you know, the gold one will be slightly better than the bronze one. And the silver one, obviously, would be in the center. So those are the parts that matter. And as you get those parts, the overall quality and speed of your car increase. But it doesn't do it like in a one-to-one sense of like, okay, I got an engine part, so now I'm faster. It's just, oh, I got this part here. Let's say it's a brake part. So my, score goes up. My overall value of my car goes up. And then my car just increase, slightly along this line that will just make your cars faster regardless. Or better handling regardless. You'll get points, but it doesn't have a one-to-one interaction with your vehicle. It's just you progress up this line, this invisible line of quality until you get to the next part. Which I found odd, but I guess this isn't a racing sim.
No.
If this game is anything, it's a very arcade racer. So I guess that makes sense.
It's more like you're leveling up as opposed to the vehicles actually changing.
Yeah, so I mean, you're really just collecting parts, and that's the easiest concept to understand. But it seems a little weird that those parts do not have a correlation to pieces of your car, considering how big into the racing this game really is. So now I have my vehicle. It is set to this dirt spec. So if I was going to race in a canyon or something like that, it'd be really helpful as we see the map of the U.S. And this was probably like, let's say, 4 or 5 hours into gameplay when I capture this. So I don't have the majority of the country unlocked yet. And I mean, you go from area to area. They give you different excuses why you have to go across here, and then you end up in the southwest, and at that point you can unlock like the highest level of cars. As the game's actually trying to explain multiplayer to me right now, which is weird. They give you, like, everybody in this game is 5'10". Like, there's one gang in this game, and you're part of it. It's called the 5'10".
Yeah.
But it's been broken up into different factions. I mean, I guess I could equate it to having a intramural hockey team in high school, whereas like we're playing the other, the other schools in the Toronto District School Board, but we're all just kids in the Toronto District School Board. It doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, so you get, if you do well for your faction, you get a few extra points, stuff like that, but it doesn't really mean anything. And then you go across the United States as a guy driving a Nissan GTR. Spawns in the exact same thing, finishes his mission, spawns right into me. So
nice.
But I'm going to show you exactly how quickly you can flip between cars in a second, as we're just looking at some of the parts of this vehicle. But yeah, you can just go to your mobile garage and select all the vehicles you have and all the specs.
Okay. And
then just boom, there you go. So I have my old street spec here, and I can go back and forth between the dirt and the street.
Oh, that's good.
Exactly as quickly as I want to. So I think that's pretty much it for the crew. This year's almost done, but we still have more gameplays this year, so check in with us next week.